Hi, this is Rocio Bolivar, and I'm the founder of the Empower Workshop series and her professional network, where we bring amazing experts and speakers to discuss personal and professional development topics tailored for women. Today, I have the great pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest, Elise Zhu, the brain coach for leaders, discussing the topic of mastering women's resilience, unleashing the power of neuroplasticity. Elise brings over 20 years of invaluable experience in leadership development. She's not just a seasoned executive coach and corporate trainer, she's a visionary who has dedicated her career to integrating evidence-based neuroscience with leadership principles to achieve transformational results. As a thought leader, Elise possesses a deep passion for helping individuals and organizations tap into their untapped potential and uncover their inner brilliance, empowering clients from diverse backgrounds, ranging from Fortune 500 executives to startup creative teams. Her dedication to staying up to date with the latest scientific research allows her to continually expand her knowledge, addressing a wide range of topics, including sustaining high performance, optimizing executive well-being, igniting creativity on demand, cultivating leadership resilience, and enhancing female leadership. Thank you, Elise, for being here, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Rocio. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you
Hi.
very much. Thank you very much for you guys, first for Rocio's invitation, and also for, everyone who signed up for the interest in this topic. So as Rocio mentioned, I'm passionate about using neuroscience and of course psychology, which is my background, to help individuals improve, whatever they want to improve. And today we'll be talking about women's resilience through this amazing ability we have called neuroplasticity. So let me start my PPT. So first I want to share one of my favorite quotes. It says, if you are not using your brain, if you are not working with your brain, you are actually working against it. So today, as we'll be talking about resilience, I want to share with you how we can work with our brain to improve resilience. So today we'll be covering 4 main areas. First, we'll be talking about our unique emotional terrain, especially how our brains are differently, uniquely hardwired compared to men's, and how that affects our emotional, cognitive, and psychological areas. And then I'll be delving into the concept of neuroplasticity and its impact on resilience. But the most important thing is I want to be practical. I don't want to spend too much time on the technical and the academic part. We want to learn how to really improve our resilience. So I'll be talking about ways to rewire our brain through neuroplasticity so that we can improve our resilience. And the last part, which I'm most passionate about, is about a hormone that we all have, but most of people don't know how to use it. So I want to share with you how to unleash this amazing power within, called the resilience hormone. And then, just be resilient all the time. So this is the topics we're gonna cover. And we hopefully will have half an hour to ask questions. So first, let's talk about our brain. But first, I'm going to deliver some really bad news. Sorry about that, ladies. I'll first, start with sharing some studies about what kind of impact the pandemic has had on the general population's mental health. There are lots of studies done on lots of people, but I'm not going to go over all the details. I just want to emphasize one of the risk factors, which I highlight in yellow, is being a female is actually a risk factor when we are confronted or encounter, big stresses like a pandemic. And then let's see how that impacts us. So studies show that, being a woman actually are significantly associated with greater psychological impact of the pandemic. And we have higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. And then we also have, for pregnant women, they showed higher levels of depressive and anxiety symptoms, and also reported more perceived helplessness. And women and young people have higher risks of psychiatric disorders and loneliness. We also suffered more post-traumatic stress symptoms in, all these domains. This is the pandemic. And how about, without pandemic, just like in our daily life, what are the risks of being a woman? Well, unfortunately, being a woman, studies found that this is from Mayo Clinic, we are nearly twice as likely as men to be diagnosed with depression. Well, one thing I need to mention is it doesn't mean that men have less depression, but the thing about diagnosis is actually men are found to be less likely to go to the medical help to get a diagnosis. So this, I think I'll mention later about my husband. He would adamantly say, I don't have a depression, which we all know he actually had, but he would deny that, especially being a hardcore Texan, Yeah, so that's that. However, still women are nearly twice as likely. And in terms of anxiety, we are also 1.5 to 2 times as likely as to be diagnosed. And in terms of Alzheimer's disease, we also have a higher lifetime risk. Of course, people say, because women live longer, right? Life expectancy wise, women living longer than men. That's why maybe we are having more of the Alzheimer's disease diagnosis. But in fact, 2/3 of the Alzheimer's patients are women. So age is not the only factor. So yeah, these are really bad news. I hope, we are not depressed already hearing these news. But, before I explain like why is that, I want to first have some fun. So Stephanie and Rocio, are you guys ready to have some fun? Let's first do an assessment. So in these 4 pictures, just guess, okay, with your intuition, gut feeling, guess what kind of feeling this person is having in these 4 pictures, and then write down your answers. For example, like, in the picture A is the guy feeling embarrassed, guilty, fantasizing, or concerned. I'll give you guys 1 minute. Please do not overthink. It's not a question to overthink. It's really about your gut feeling, okay? So let me know when you're done.
All ready.
Okay, Rocio's done. How about Stephanie? Okay, you're on mute. Let me know when you guys are done.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Oh, no problem. But don't overthink.
I just had a technical issue.
Oh, sorry
Okay.
about that. Yeah, I
Now I
had a
can see.
technical issue just before the thing started. So yeah, technology is not trustworthy. Yeah.
Um,
Okay, I'm done.
Great. Let's see the answers. So first of all, it's a real test, okay? It's not something I made up. It's called a reading the mind in the eyes text. And of course, you know, we select just a few. It's a much longer test. So let's see. The answer is concerned. Did you get it right? And yeah, you guys need to let me know.
I got
whether you get
concerned.
it. Great. So the second, doubtful. How about
Oh.
doubtful? No? And C, uneasy. No? D, interested. Yeah? Okay, so let's see. If you got 3 or 4 right, who got 3 or 4 right? Anyone?
So I got concerned for the first one. The second one, affectionate. The third one, friendly. So I got that both off.
Okay.
And then the last one, interested.
Interested. So you got 2 right, right? How about Stephanie? How about Stephanie?
I got 1 right.
You
the
got
last
1 right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
We're below average.
yeah, one's average, one's below average, but it's totally fine. It's totally fine. We're just not in the normal range. But that's totally fine. But statistically speaking, because today, let's say, you know, I'm talking about gender difference. I'm not talking about individual differences. Okay. So do not feel bad that, okay, you know, you didn't get 4 right on the test. But interestingly speaking, globally, female as a gender somehow got better result compared to men. We're not saying, you know, everyone gets right, but, you know, compared to men, we get better results. And why is that? So now I need to talk about the reasons also related to all the bad news we had. So far I've been just delivering bad news, huh? So far so bad. Let's look at the reasons behind. So there's a structure in our brain, basically the light blue part in the brain. It's called the limbic system. So this is what we call the emotional brain. It generates emotions for us and also has a part of emotional regulation function. So interestingly enough, we found overall the size of the limbic system is larger than in the female brain. So what does it mean? It means that, first of all, we are better usually, okay, overall as a gender, we are better in terms of recognizing, you know, what we just did, recognizing people's emotions in eyes and facial expressions and nonverbal cues and things like that. And it's much more natural for female to connect and bonding better with each other. And also we show higher levels of empathy and compassion. These are good, you know, in many ways. However, it also comes as has a cost, which is called the compassion fatigue, which can explain why in, you know, big stress like a pandemic, by caring for other people, we're actually having the negative cost of caring, which is having the compassion fatigue. And this is also called a secondary traumatic stress. So it may explain, you know, part of why we, as a female gender, we have higher risks of, you know, emotional reactions, especially during stress. And another possible reason. These are only possible reasons. I'm sure you've heard about the neurotransmitter called serotonin, right? Have you guys heard about serotonin? Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people, would have. So it's a neurotransmitter that is responsible for people to feel more relaxed and overall well-being. So sometimes it's called a happy molecule. However, unfortunately, we found that women, we have 52% less serotonin in our brain and body. And that gives us the risk of various problems, like depression, suicide, aggression, anxiety, and bulimia. But we are not talking about causation. It's a correlation. It may give us, more risks, but it's not a definitive causation. And then there's another part of the brain called anterior cingulate cortex. We don't need to really remember all these names, but we need to know there's a part of the brain that's more active in our female brain, which means we might be processing more negative information if that part is more active. And that may result in more worries and anxieties. So up till now, we know that all these bad news I delivered in the beginning may be explained in parts about our unique wirings, in terms of our emotional brain, our serotonin, and also the ACC part. Of course, actually, in terms of gender differences in our brains and a man's brain, up to 2015, we already found more than 100 gender differences already. We don't have all the time to explain everything, of course, today. So these are the three I picked out today that's related to resilience. So let's move into the second part, neuroplasticity and the impact on resilience. So first of all, let's look at some interesting brain scans. These are called SPECT brain scans, which scans the blood flow in our brains. So you can see over time, when we get older, there are areas in the brain that has less or even no blood flows. It doesn't mean that there are holes in your brains. It means it has less activities in these parts of the brain, which means your brain's working much less well compared to when you're younger. So these are in like normal populations who don't, let's say, spend extra conscious effort in doing things to build cognitive and mental resilience. So this doctor, I don't know whether you've heard about him. He's actually a celebrity doctor, we would say. He's a psychiatrist, Daniel Amen. He's a founder of Amen Clinics. He specializes in brain disorders, and he loves scanning people's brains. So he's scanned tens of thousands of brains of people in different race, different gender, And he also has a TED Talk about all the scans he's done. And he's also like a 8 or 9 times New York bestseller. He's written lots of books about the brain. So interestingly enough, he scanned his own brain at age 37. And then he found out his brain looks actually worse compared to his mother, who was like 60 at the time. So he thought, okay, that's not good. I need to do something about that. So he started really changing lots of things, his diet, his exercise, his sleep, and his mindset and things like that. And 20 years later, he actually rescanned his brain. And interestingly enough, that brain actually looks younger, right? So that's the thing that he really wants to tell us. You can do something about your brain to make it more resilient, actually even younger over time. And we saw, the first scan, usually at 82, people's brain look like that over time, right? However, Doris Rapp, she's a board-certified environmental medical professional, and she's also a clinical assistant professor of pediatrics at State University of New York at Buffalo. So at 82, her brain looks like that. Isn't that amazing? I want to have a brain like that at 82. I don't know about you guys, huh? So the message here really is brain aging is optional. We can do something about the brain, and your brain is actually always changing, sometimes changing for the bad, but sometimes changing for the good. So we can actually do something about that. So that's the concept of neuroplasticity. Our brain have this lifelong capacity to change and rewire itself in response to the stimulation of learning and experience. So what are you learning, what you're doing actually are changing the brain all the time, including now. We're learning something new. Our brain is changing for the good, right? But it can also change for the bad. For example, if we are doing something that's not good for our resilience, say smoking, then it also changes our brain. Or we are using our electronic devices all the time. For example, studies have shown within 5 days, 1 hour of using electronic devices actually already rewires your brain's prefrontal cortex. So these are not for the good things. These are called negative neuroplasticity. So we need to be really conscious and aware about what we are doing to our brain that's going to impact on our resilience. So another quote that I really love to share with you guys, it's from David Eagleman, also a very famous neuroscientist. He said, "From cradle to grave, we are works in progress," which means there's always hope, right? Nothing's set in stone. So resilience, I think we all know what resilience means, so I'm not going to go into details. I got a definition from American Psychological Association. But usually it basically means, like this tree, right? When we are facing difficult and challenging situations and stresses, do we bend or do we break? Can we go back to normal and even become stronger after that? Or we just, like we saw in these studies, we developed pathologies like depression and anxiety, and some people even, suicide and things like that. We definitely don't want that, right? So higher resilience means that you are able to bounce back quickly. And it also means another concept in psychology, we all heard about PTSD, but there's another concept called post-traumatic growth. This is also one part that I really like about resilience. We can grow out stress, not be broken after that. So in terms of neuroplasticity and resilience, now we know that we have this lifelong ability to change our brain. So it's never too late to learn to be more resilient. And we can intentionally and consciously do something to rewire our brain's structure and function to be more resilient. So in a way, resilience, like other things, like learning a language, to be frank, or learning an instrument or whatever skills that you want to learn. Resilience is also the same. It's a learnable skill. So now we need to learn how to build resilience through these magical neuroplasticity. So to rewire our brains. First, I would say start with your hardware. This is how I look at our brain. If our brain is a supercomputer, right? It has the hardware part and also the software part. The hardware part is really the biological. So the biological foundation of your brain is built by nutrition. And of course, other things like sleep and exercise and all that. But really, the first step is really nutrition. And this book, I really, really would suggest you guys, if you're interested, read this book. This book somehow really changed lots of my, let's say, perception about nutrition. In fact, I already learned and know a lot about especially brain-friendly diet, right? However, this book is a book I recently read because, you know, like I mentioned before, my husband was really having a depressive episode because we just moved here a few months back, and then he was starting this extremely stressful and demanding job that's basically has to be done by two people, but he's doing it on his own. So he's basically having a burnout, you know, and of course, you know, he wouldn't admit that he's depressed, but he's not having any smile for months, and he's tired all the time, and he doesn't joke anymore. So we all know that he's depressed, but you know, he doesn't want to admit that. And we were also having trouble find a therapist in the beginning. So I remember I read something about nutrition before, and I remember I heard a lecture from actually one of the author of the book called Bonnie Kaplan, who's a really I would say lead researcher in this field about nutrition and mental health. So I remember one of the which they call broad spectrum micronutrients. Basically, it's just bottle of vitamins and minerals, but you know, very high grade, clinical grade. But I'm not trying to promote any brand or product. I'm just sharing how this thing really just within a week of taking that thing, my husband, you know, we start to see change. Like he's sleeping much better, he has more energy, and he starts to joke again. So we know, oh, okay, this is helping. So yeah, I'm gonna put him on that for a long time. So this really gives me this renewed interest in nutrition. So I started to read about this book, and they shared a lot of peer-reviewed studies, randomized clinical trials, really the highest standard of research studies, you know, to show how diet, how micronutrients makes a huge difference in people's mood and overall mental health. Some are really serious mental disorders like schizophrenia, or lots of adult and children's ADHD and bipolar and things like that. You know, they are not saying that everything can be cured by nutrition, not that, but you know, it can definitely make a huge difference. So I would suggest, you know, if you're interested in learning that, read that book. So the research shows the best or the ideal diet for human being as a species is the Mediterranean style diet that's rich in fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, you know, overall plant-based. Not saying you shouldn't eat meat at all, but, you know, really like moderate and high quality proteins. And yeah, that's the book. So one thing I want to emphasize here is, as we talk about, we have 52% less serotonin, right, as a woman. So in the book, they were talking about, you know, how many micronutrients, including vitamins and a mineral that's needed to be present in our bloodstream, which goes to our brain, so that it can synthesize this serotonin. You know, it's not something that, of course, you know, people are taking these drugs as a serotonin receptor, and I don't know, SSRI, I don't know how to pronounce that anymore. But anyway, these are, chemicals that people are taking. But in fact, we can synthesize that by eating enough nutritional food and then produce that in our brain. And later I'll talk about that actually also in our gut. So it's not just one thing I learned from the book is it's not just the one magic, let's say, ingredients. Say some people may say, oh, take vitamin D or take magnesium. I used to do that. Now I learned that it's not enough, actually. It has to be really a broad spectrum of lots of stuff together to work together so that it can synthesize what we need to be happy and healthy. So that's that. So some studies in the book, as we are talking about, building resilience. So there are studies done when in New Zealand, very serious earthquake, and then there's a flood in Alberta, Canada, and then also a terrible mass shooting in a mosque in New Zealand, and another control groups. So what they found is after 4 to 6 weeks of micronutrients treatment, you can see that, people's stress levels return to normal. That the black line is the normal range, is the non-clinical range, right? So, they quickly go back to the normal range, which means not clinically depressed or stressed. But people taking vitamin D or just treatment as usual, say, going to a therapist, not taking macronutrients, they are still in the clinical range. So that's some data to show, how helpful nutrition can really do to our resilience. So now after nutrition, we need to take care of our gut. Oh, what happened? Sorry. Yeah, we need to take care of our gut health because our gut is considered our second brain, because our gut and our head brain is totally related by this vagus nerve. And then we have 200 to 400 million neurons, which are brain cells actually in our gut. That's why I think about why it's called gut feeling. Because it started in your gut, right? Now you know, gut feeling. And then, interestingly, 90% of our serotonin is actually released and synthesized in our gut, which is why it's extremely important to take care of our gut health. If your gut is not healthy, it's actually extremely hard for you to feel happy and relaxed. It's just very hard. So let's see how we can take care of our gut health. We can eat more fermented foods and also yogurt or some form of cheese and probiotics, good high quality probiotics that can really go to your gut and not killed by your stomach acid. Okay, that's important. And also prebiotics, which means food that has lots of fiber, because in order for these good bacteria, these probiotics to survive in your gut, you need food for them. So these fibers are actually food for these probiotics. That's why it's also very, very important to take in lots of fibers in your diet. And now we talk about mindfulness, ways to rewire our brain. So let's see how actually studies have shown how mindfulness can rewire our brain. That's related to the 3 things I mentioned about the female brain, okay? First is a thing called amygdala in our limbic system. We remember we have a bigger limbic system, right? And we have an overactive amygdala, which is the emotional center of our brain. So sometimes we call it the troublemaker. We cannot control our emotions because amygdala is just making troubles for us. So studies have shown that 8 weeks of mindfulness training, 20 minutes a day. You don't need to do like hours a day like monks, right? We don't need that. These are really like newbies, people who have never done any kind of mindfulness training, meditations. They started that, and then they found out they have less gray matter density, which means their amygdala actually is smaller. That means we are less reactive to stresses, which means, stress is still out there, but we are less impacted by that, which is much better, right? And we have better emotional regulation abilities. Another study, actually, there are lots of studies out there. Okay, today I'm just selecting a few that's related to our topic. So this is a very short-term study. 5 days, 30 minutes a day of mindfulness practice. We found that there are more cerebral blood flow in ACC part, which makes us have more worries and anxieties, because that part helps us to process more negative informations. And then just by doing 5-day, very short-term practice, we already can have better self-regulation, because that part has more blood flow for us to, work on. And the last study is done on these really like long-term, very skilled meditators already. So these people, interested enough, compared to people who've never done any meditation, they have elevated levels of melatonin and serotonin. So serotonin, we know we have less, right? So we need more. And the melatonin, have you guys heard about melatonin? I think you have, right? Lots of people are taking melatonin because, we heard that it helps us to sleep. It does help to actually prepare us to get into this relaxation mode so that we can go into the sleep. However, in order for your brain to produce melatonin, you have to have the precursor, which is serotonin. So if you are not having enough serotonin in your body, you cannot produce enough melatonin for you to relax and go to sleep. So these things are totally related. So this is very important. So by practicing mindfulness, you can have more over time. Okay, this is not like overnight impact. You have to keep doing that so that your brain structure and function really starts to change. So these are the 3 areas that mindfulness can be helpful to help us. Women, our brains are different, right? To rewire that. So how do we practice mindfulness? I know lots of people heard about mindfulness, and some people say, oh, now I have one more thing to do on my to-do list. Yeah, which is meditation. Oh boy. Yeah, these are the conscious things we can do. Let's say, meditation, yoga, body scan, or breathing exercise. These really takes time and effort to do that. And of course, I suggest, if you really want to, let's say, reap all these benefits, it will be great. It's not only for, that 3 parts of the brain, but also overall, studies have shown that it helps to improve physical health, cognitive health, mental health, and also actually your social relationships, which is overall just great for everyone. However, I would say it's not also suitable for everyone, because some people, they get even more anxious because they realize, I cannot meditate. I get really nervous and I get so much intrusive thoughts. So what do I do? So I would say, really choose something that you find it enjoyable and you can also keep doing it over time. So for mindfulness, if meditation is not for you or yoga is not for you, do something else. So I would suggest read Ellen Lanner. She is considered the mother of mindfulness. She started studying mindfulness in 1970s, which is even earlier than the father of mindfulness, which is Jon Kabat-Zinn, right? We all heard about him. But in fact, I like Ellen Langer's method even better, because for her, she's like, you know what, meditation and all that, these are all great, but it's quite hard for most people. So what she suggests is mindfulness is actually just noticing new things. It's actually training your brain to pay attention, focus on things that you probably wouldn't be focusing on. So she would suggest, if you are doing the same things over and over, try your best to notice, let's say, 3 new things. It can be 3 new sensations or 3 new perspectives that you've never thought about. Just something new that you haven't paid attention. And that's it. Because for her, because we heard being mindful is, be present, do not judge, and things like that, right? And she says, if you are not present, you don't even know that you're not present. So how can you be mindful, right? So just, focus on something that's easier to grasp, which is new, something new, and that's it. So I would suggest you guys to read her very amazing book. One is called Mindfulness. That's she has a 25 anniversary version in like 20, I forgot, because the first version published really, really early. And then this year she published another new book called The Mindful Body, Thinking Your Way to Chronic Health, which I love. So she shared lots of studies, just, telling us how being mindful can really change your health in really better ways, being much more resilient. Okay, so what time is it now? Great, we have 15 minutes to go to the last part, which I love, the resilience hormone part. So you can see the chemical formula here, right? So we're gonna learn how to release that amazing hormone, okay? It's called oxytocin. Anyone heard about that, oxytocin?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about Stephanie? Have you heard about oxytocin?
Yes, I have.
Yes, yes. So we all have, because it really, as a hormone, I think it has got all the hype a hormone can get, right? And it has lots of nickname. It's called love hormone, because we found that, in order to have long-term relationships, say intimate relationships or other relationships, you have to have that hormone present. And then it's also called the cuddle hormone. And then we will learn how to cuddle scientifically so that we can reap that oxytocin on demand. And then it's also called the trust hormone or trust molecule, because in order to have mutual trust, we have to have oxytocin present in our blood. Otherwise, it's not real trust. It's just something in your thinking, a thought. It's not real embodied trust. So, because I do lots of leadership trainings, I also, always talk a lot about this trust hormone, because, for anyone to trust you, if you are not trusting other people, sorry, they cannot have oxytocin released in their body, so that you cannot really get trust from them. So in order for people to trust you, you have to trust them first. That's the first step. So having other people's trust is to take a risk first, okay? So that's trust hormone. Also, amazingly enough, it is the natural antidote of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, that it's also nicknamed the public enemy number 1, or the belly fat hormone. We probably heard about that. When you are stressed, especially chronically stressed, you are more likely to accumulate fat around your belly area, right? And it's very hard to lose, because of cortisol, actually. So what I'm saying is, if we know how to release oxytocin on demand every day, it's less likely for you to accumulate too much fat around your belly area. So this is a really good side effect, right? So I personally call it the resilience hormone, because this hormone can really help us heal lots of the damage that cortisol and other stressors can have on our body, and then make us much more resilient over time. So it's a long-term resolution, I would say, for our very stressful modern life. So let's see how we can have more of it on demand. As it's called, the cuddle hormone. So when we cuddle, okay, it has to cuddle like long enough. And also very important, you have to be cuddling someone that you really like, I would say. If you are, forced to cuddle with someone that you resent or don't like that much, you would have the opposite effect, which means cortisol, not oxytocin. Okay, that's very important. So 20 seconds, I would say that, lots of studies show that 20 seconds helps to release oxytocin. But there are also other studies I've seen that some studies say only 6 seconds can already, have oxytocins. And some say probably even longer. So I would say it may depend in terms of individuals, So there's a formula. Hug until you feel that you're starting to feel relaxed. That's probably the best time for you, okay? So that's that. And also how many, right? How many hugs can help us daily? So Paul Zak is also a neuroscientist. He studies only oxytocin, actually. So we call him Dr. Love. So his free prescription is having at least, this is the minimum, okay? Having at least 8 hugs a day can help you really, heal from the cortisol that you are producing every day, and then help you to heal the damages and to be healthier and happier. So that's the minimum amount. So funny enough, I remember one of my students, she learned that. She went home and told her husband. And then later she told me as a feedback, she said, now at our home, every day we actually set up alarm clocks to hug. I said, that's great, right? You're hugging already. You may as well just hug enough so that your body can actually heal each other, right? It's not only heal yourself, but also people you're hugging. And of course, some people don't have anyone to hug. Then what you do, right? There are lots of other ways to do it, but today we don't have too much time. So I'll share a few that we can do alone, let's say, on our own to release more oxytocin. So first, helping other people. Help caring other people. It can be your family members, people you love, or it can be strangers. Just by helping other people, you actually release more oxytocin. And, doing volunteer work, doing charity work, or just random acts of kindness. Giving a smile to a stranger, or helping some people, old people, go over the street, or just very small things, actually. We found out, what we call it, the happiness trifecta. So it's the helper's high. When we are helping other people, we actually release not only oxytocin, we also release dopamine, which is the pleasure chemical, right? That makes us, in euphoria. And also serotonin, we talked about that, we are in lack. So isn't that great? By helping other people, by caring for other people, we have the happiness trifecta: dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. It helps us to create resilience. So caring actually creates resilience for us. Isn't that amazing? I think, for most people, we would say, when we are giving, when we are caring, helping other people, we are giving. But in fact, I would say nature is quite fair in this way. When we are giving out, we are actually receiving at the same time, right? And it makes us much more resilient. And as a species, you know, why people who help other people actually live longer, study shows. They live much longer than people who are, in a way, you know, care about themselves too much. Because for species, we want people as a group, as a species, to survive better and thrive better. Of course, you know, if you have the gene that's good for the better good, for the greater good, then you deserve to live longer, right? And pass your genes on. So that's, I would say, from an evolutionary psychology point of view, that's the reason. So by sharing that, remind me of another quote. I really love quotes. So this quote, it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So it's an African proverb. I love it because it's related to the social part of oxytocin, because human beings, we are actually social animals. So by caring about your social network, caring about other people, we are, you know, reaping oxytocin and the happiness trifecta, but also we are benefiting other people. So we found out, you know, creating groups, creating tribes, creating communities, we are actually helping not only ourselves, but also other people. That's why I actually want to say thank you for Rocio for creating such communities. Although today we don't have lots of people online, but you know, we're going to send our videos to people who sign up, and hopefully more people will know the message that, you know, not just taking care of ourselves. By taking care of people, we are actually also taking care of ourselves and doing, you know, the greater good. So that's a quote that I think it's fitting for this situation. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Rocio. So I'm going to give you guys a homework, which I love the concept. It's called the social investment exercise. And it's also very interesting because starting from yesterday, I'm reading a new book. It's called The Good Life. So it's a book about this. I don't know whether you've heard about this study. It's called the Harvard Grant Study. It has been going on for over 80 years, 8 decades, and it's still going on. They've studied these two groups of people. Now they are also studying their offspring, their children and grandchildren. So they've been following these two groups of people. First group is a group of Harvard sophomore at that year. I think it's 1937, 1938. Yes, started in that year. And then also another group of not really educated, but you know, also young males in Boston area. So they've been following their life for over 8 decades, studying what kind of factors can predict a good life, a life that people are thriving and they're flourishing. And interesting enough, out of every people's surprise, only one factor can predict who can live a flourishing and a thriving life. It's relationship. It's the quality of your relationship. So now we know by investing in relationships that can first predict you, helping you to have a thriving and a flourishing life. And now we actually know because of oxytocin, right? It heals you, you know, and also it helps to heal people around you so that everyone having a much better life. So apart from investing your money, now we need to start investing in our social relationships. So by doing the social investment exercise, it's very simple. Just by spending 2 minutes a day. So writing an email or a short message to someone in your network that's called weak ties, which means you're not that close to them yet. It may be some, people you went to school in like elementary school 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever. You haven't been in contact for long, but you know each other. So you reach out, express whatever. It can be gratitude, it can be, just checking in and whatever. So research shows 3 weeks doing that social investment exercise, actually you feel much better, and the people who you contacted feel much better, and your social relationships, strengthen just by doing 2 minutes a day. So I think that's good investment, right? So that's a homework. So let's wrap up. Today we covered lots of stuff, huh? Yeah. So we've known that as women, we do have, actually the gender is a risk factor, which is quite unfair somehow, right? We have a bigger limbic system, we have less serotonin, and we have a bigger ACC, which makes us prone to have more worries and anxieties and things like that. However, we also have a really good news. Because of neuroplasticity, which means we always have hope, and we can do something about it. We have the ownership to change ourselves, rewire our brain, no matter how our brain is wired already, right? There are lots of ways to wire our brain, but it's okay, it's fine. We can rewire starting tonight, actually. Do something differently and consciously so that we can have much more resilience that you want. So it's a learnable skill over a lifetime. And then in terms of building resilience, we talked about building the foundation, which is the hardware of your brain and nervous system through nutrition, having a Mediterranean style diet. And also, if needed, that depending on really individual needs, maybe a really high quality micronutrient supplement. And then we also talked about gut health, because it's the second brain, and lots of serotonin, 90% of serotonin. Actually, also 60% of your immunity, it's related to your gut health. So that's why we need to take care of that. Eat more fermented foods, really good quality probiotics and prebiotics, okay? And mindfulness, we talked about how it really rewires the structure and also the functions of our brain, especially the 3 parts that's, in our first part that I talked about, the bad news, but it's okay, we can rewire that over time. And also talk about, you can consciously practice meditation, yoga, breathing, and also bring a body scan and things like all kinds of, mindfulness trainings. But if you find it really, really hard for you, you can start much more easily, suggested by Ellen Lerner. She's one of my role model, really. She's the first woman who had tenure in the Harvard psychology department. She's really a legend. I love her. So she said, okay, start something really easy just by trying to notice something new in things that you're already doing. Okay, so that's mindfulness. And the last part is release oxytocin. We should love oxytocin more. I love it. Yeah, so we can do lots of things. And today I shared, by scientifically hugging, hugging as long as you need, actually. Okay, I would say as long as enough, right? As long as, or as much as possible. And some people, I would say, if you have a pet at home, hug them. If you have children at home, hug them. Even pets, we found out that it's totally the same as hugging people. It also helps the pet releasing oxytocin, heals them, and also heals you. So this is really great, hugging. And then if we don't have anyone to hug yet, it's okay. We can, just by helping other people, by practicing random acts of kindness to reap lots of oxytocin so that we stress-proof our lives, not only for ourselves, but also people around you. So that's what I have for today. And now I think we can go into any questions you want. Yeah, great timing.
Thank you, Elise. No, yeah, you're great in timing. And I love the happiness trifecta.
Oh, great.
We already know that helping others feel good, but I never knew that it contributed towards your own self-resilience. So
isn't that amazing,
really interesting.
Right?
That is amazing. That's really interesting for me to hear. So thank you. You appreciate the feedback. So we did receive a couple of questions ahead of this virtual for some who could not attend. So I would love to dive into those. But Stephanie, if you have some, then feel free to also go ahead and.
Yeah, Stephanie, how about we start with you? Do you have any questions?
I just wanted to ask, where does exercise play a role in all of this?
Oh,
I'm a little surprised that you didn't mention exercise.
Because, I don't want to run out of time. In fact, I have days of resilience courses, but today we only have 1 hour. That's why I selected a few. Exercise plays a huge role in rewiring our brains. And it also depends on what kind of exercise. I would say, if you feel that you are already under lots of stress, which means you can sense, say, you are not sleeping well, you are agitated, you feel tired, and you may be accumulating belly fat and things like that, these are signs of very high level of cortisol. And if you are feeling that, we don't suggest you have too high intensity exercise, because this will result in having even higher levels of cortisol, which is bad, right? Which is, too high is very bad for our body. So in these cases, we would suggest to have low to mid-level intensity exercise, for example, like walking, swimming, biking, things like that. Do not go to do resilience training when you are stressed. However, I'm not saying we shouldn't do resilience training ever. Resilience training also contributes to lots of the rewiring our brain. For example, it helps us to improve, for example, memory and other cognitive health. So yeah, always do exercise, but you need to select wisely, like what to do and at when. Yeah, according to your current situation, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions that you would love to know?
Oh, I'm definitely gonna look up these authors and the books that you recommended.
Yeah, great. I will actually send out a what I call cheat sheet, which is a summary, which also will include all the extra resources I recommended, and also some I didn't mention, actually, some like TED Talks and other talks that you can watch to really complement, the topics I mentioned today. So you'll be receiving that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's very informative.
You're welcome. In fact, before we dive into other questions, can I, let's say, listen to some of the feedback from Stephanie, like what you learned that you found interesting? Yeah.
The idea of rewiring your brain is just amazing to me.
Great.
What I got out of today, I guess I didn't know so much about the nutrition part. of the role that plays.
Me neither. Me neither. It's
I
really,
really
really
need to work on that.
It's really interesting.
I have a long way to go for that.
Well, it's never too
I
late, like we said,
I
for
know.
neuroplasticity. So yeah, it's
Right,
great.
right.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I definitely got a lot out of today.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
I took a lot of notes, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, thank you so
Cool.
much.
Cool. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback, Stephanie. I'm so happy. So, Rocio, what are the questions we received? Yeah.
So some of the questions really involve regarding the age. So can age impact neuroplasticity? And if so, how?
Age definitely impact neuroplasticity. So let's just look at some examples. For example, when we were young, if we learn something, say in language, it seems much easier compared to when we are now this age, right? Because when kids are young, their brain are actually developing new connections much quickly than when we get older. So it really the I would say the speed of neuroplasticity, the way to build new connections. In fact, there are different kinds of neuroplasticity. I can talk about it later. But overall, in order to rewire your brain, first of all, the speed is obviously slower and slower over time, and the quality, I would say, also would decrease somehow over time, because let's say in terms of something we mentioned like nutrition, if over time we are not taking in some nutrition, and also for some people genetically they have trouble actually synthesize some of the nutritions or some of the elements that needed for the brain to, let's say, produce. So over time, actually, it gets worse and worse. So of course, it's always the best to learn everything when we were young, but it's not possible, right? So the neuroplasticity part is telling us it's okay if we haven't learned what we want to learn when we were young. It's never too late. However, we may need to use longer time and also more effort to achieve the same result. But it doesn't mean it's not possible. It's always possible. But yeah, we need to, use more time and effort. That's
And what would you say the differences between children and adults in terms of this impacting their learning or development within different age groups?
How about because we all have teenage kids, right? So we mentioned that. I don't know about Stephanie's. Do you have kids, and how old are they?
Yes, I do. I have teenagers.
Oh, great. We all have teenagers. So how about I talk a bit about teenagers' brain and how neuroplasticity actually impacts their learning and mood and whatever, So when kids reach teenage years, their brain undergoes extreme changes in terms of structure and the functions. So one extremely big thing that's gonna happen during the teenage years is called synaptic pruning. Pruning is something we do to plants, which means we cut off the leaves that's yellow, that's dying, things like that. So synaptic pruning is something that's happening in the teenage brains, because when kids are young, their brains actually build up lots of connections, which most of the connections actually will not be used when we grow up. So what the pruning is doing is to actually trim off, just cut off, these connections will just disappear and die, is actually to streamline these connections that kids are going to use when they grow up, which means in a way it actually increases, if if our brain is a computer, it's to help the kids to improve the speed and efficiency of how the brain is getting used. So the synaptic pruning is extremely important when they are going through that year, which means these are the years for the kids to actually somehow focusing their effort and time on things that they really love, rather than spread out all their energy on too many things, but not really, strengthen these connections that's going to be, their passion or their whatever thing they're going to specialize in their future. So that's the pruning part. Another part that's extremely important is called myelination. This is a process of, I would say, for example, like a electric wire. So myelination is a process to put a kind of sheets around the electrical wire, which is, the neurons in our brain. So when kids reach the adolescent years, their myelination speed is much quicker compared to when they are young or when they reach the adult age. This process will get slower also over time. And when they are young, it's also actually slower. But, during the teenage year, because of the pruning and also specialization, I would say, the myelination process is also helping to build actually quicker connections between the neurons so that their brain can works much faster and much more efficient. So in terms of myelination, again, it's related very closely to nutrition, which means they need a special fat to do that. So I'm sure you probably all heard about DHA. Have you? Or omega-3? Yeah.
Okay, omega-3,
you
yeah.
have, right? Yeah. So omega-3 has the ability to...
Is that from fish oil?
Yes, but also it can come from, plant source like chia seeds, flax seeds, and Brussels sprouts and things like that. So in order for the myelination to take place, we need lots of omega-3, which is the fat actually in the omega-3, to build the cell membrane, which is like the skin of our brain cells, so that the electric wire can be properly isolated, which means, if they are really very well isolated, when they have electrical signals, which is how our brain signals communicate with each other, right? When we have electrical signals, they can properly being transmitted within the neurons that's connected, while not wrongly sent to other, unrelated neurons. That's why myelination is extremely important. So I'm not saying only during teenage years they need omega-3. We always need omega-3. In fact, study shows 99% of the adults globally are not taking enough omega-3. But, in teenage years, they need much more than, we need right now. So make sure they are supplemented or they have enough, let's say, fish or other plant source, as I mentioned, in their diet. So to support their neuroplasticity activities in their brain. So that's, the things.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Our teenagers.
Yeah, I remember a doctor mentioning fish oil for my son. But I guess other plant-like substances can also supplement.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say, in terms of fish oil, you really need to be very careful about the source of where these fish are coming from, because lots of the places, these farmed fish has lots of actually both mercury and also pesticides. So it can be having, higher levels of these contaminants in the fish oil. So I would suggest to look out for these and try to find like high quality plant-based omega-3s. But it's not a must, there are also good quality fish oils out there. Yeah.
No, good advice. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
I know you mentioned a couple of strategies and activities that can enhance neuroplasticity, hugging, acts of kindness,
right. Many more.
making sure you're taking care of your gut. Are there other that you can suggest or recommend?
Of course, yeah. Well, why don't I mention some more to release oxytocin, because we always can have more, right? So in terms of oxytocin, hugging, in fact, all kinds of human touch. So skin to skin touch. And we also found out, study also found out, and not only just, touching other people, in fact, self-touch. We do have self-soothing strategies. I don't know whether you guys noticed about yourself or other people. When we are stressed, we are more likely to touch ourselves, especially our face. In fact, statistics shows we basically touch our own face about 450 times a day. Now you can start to pay attention to that. So touching yourself and, self-soothing activities like this, because if you have no one to hug at the moment, right? Just by, hugging yourself and touching yourself. And also laugh. Laugh is an extremely useful way to not only trigger oxytocin, but also endorphins. I don't know whether you heard about endorphins. You probably have, because it's also very popular in the general public, because it's a thing. It's a neurotransmitter we would release when we feel tired after a workout, after exercise. Yeah, the runner's high is actually endorphins. So just by laughing, we can have endorphins, sometimes also dopamine and also oxytocin. So in fact, I remember laughter is prescribed as a drug by this doctor. I forgot his name, but he wrote this book called The Adrenal Reset. Because I mentioned cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and a lot of people actually, they found out 75 of the American adults who have this adrenal fatigue, which means they are just releasing too high levels of cortisol over time, which is chronically stressed, So we have this adrenal fatigue. So his prescription, he's a medical doctor, prescription include laughter every day, actually. So do that, okay? And then also there are, if you want to really do some research, you can go to pharmacies. There are actually nasal sprays of oxytocin available in the market. Yeah. So of course the marketing message is to, lower your stress and improve your relationship, because it's also a love hormone, right? So if you really want that, you can try, but I would say, I would always try the natural ways first, right? Because we don't know, we don't have longitudinal studies yet to see like using these man-made hormones over time can have what kind of side effect. We don't know yet. So I would say, if you are curious, you can try, but I wouldn't recommend to use it over time, because we can produce lots of that already by ourselves. So we can do that. Another thing it's extremely fun is to make a list. So it's a list of people's names, actually. So what names? It's actually, think about, in your mind, think about a question is, if I encounter difficulty and a challenge in my life, who in my social who in my social support system will come and help me? Like, who I can reach out, who really cares about me, who really trusts me, who really, are there for me. So when we list these people's names, actually, we found out we have huge sparks of oxytocin. Isn't that amazing? So this actually is coming back to what we talk about, relationship, right? The social investment exercise. So I would say they are really the real wealth, the real treasure that we have, because just by thinking about them, we can already receive lots of oxytocin. And then by cultivating deeper relationship with more connections in your life, you can receive even more oxytocin from just by thinking about their names. So I would say hold on to this list. This is really priceless. Yeah, so these are some of the more strategies we can use, and it doesn't involve physical reaction. It can sometimes just be in your head and you can use it.
I love it.
Time. Yeah, great.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about a lot of what enhances neuroplasticity. So are there any factors that could potentially hinder or limit neuroplasticity?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, neuroplasticity, of course, today we talk about how magical it is, but, it can also backfire. Like I said, there are negative neuroplasticities happening, or actually also all the time if we're not aware. So in terms of what prevents or hinders neuroplasticity or having like a bad effect of neuroplasticity, there are also a few things, for example, first, actually a poor diet, I would say, because like I mentioned, it's really the foundation. Our brain needs to be plastic or malleable enough for you to quickly rewire it. So in terms of diet, if you are not taking enough, like I mentioned, omega-3 and also other antioxidant, for example, I would suggest taking lots of berries, especially blueberries, which is considered a superfood, and also turmeric, which is abundant in yellow curries and red curries and things like that. And also dark chocolate, which has lots of antioxidants. So, of course, you're not having lots of these foods, which helps to increase the plasticity of your brain to quickly rewire that. And other than that, you are also having even worse food. For example, lots of sugar, high in sugar, high in saturated fat. And also, if you are smoking, if you are drinking lots of alcohol, and you are not taking enough, fibers to help your gut health, and also, you're not having enough good bacteria, which are the probiotics in your gut, then these are all factors that hinder the neuroplasticity. So these are the nutritional part. Another huge part is sleep. Sleep is also the foundation. And Stephanie mentioned about exercise, right? So interesting thing is exercise do have a kind of mediating factor, which means if you are not sleeping well, but you are still doing exercise, it can offset some of the bad effect on, your brain. And if you're not eating right, you are doing some exercise, then it still helps a lot. But if you are not eating right, you are not sleeping right, you are not doing exercise, then it's extremely hard for your brain to have this hardware to be, properly rewired on demand. So these are really, the foundations.
Oh, thank you so much, Elise. And we're close to time, but I did have one question
Yeah,
that
sure.
was asked. So how long does it typically take for neuroplasticity change to occur in the brain?
Very good question. So it really depends. Study have shown that you know, in order to rewire your brain, we need to see the individual differences. For some people, the quickest we've seen is actually less than 3 weeks, 18 days. Most of people know 3 weeks to change a habit, rewire your brain. But in fact, for some people, 18 days is already enough. And but for some folks, very bad news. It may take as long as 265 days, which is whoa, like how many months? That's very long, right? So I would say it depends, but never lose hope because we don't know how long you will take. It may take you just 18 days, right? I would say, yeah, just try, you know, try on yourself. And of course, it really depends, like, you know, like how often you are doing it and what's the intensity you are doing it, and what's the environment and how's your diet, how much you're sleeping. Because if you're not sleeping well, it's your IQ is already decreasing the next day. You know, I would say that's also kind of a bad neuroplasticity. Of course, it's short term.
Yeah.
But you know, it all has an effect on how well our brain can be rewired. So these are the factors to pay attention to.
Okay, thank you so much, Elise. And we're now at
You're
time,
welcome.
so we'll just wrap it up here. So thank
Great.
you again for sharing all your knowledge on neuroplasticity. I learned a lot, took a lot of notes.
Great.
And thank you to our special guest, Stephanie. And thank
Stephanie, thank
all
you.
of those watching the recording. So I welcome everyone to stay tuned for more from the Empowered Workshop series for other expert topics and insights on personal growth and empowerment. So thank you, ladies, and have
Thank
a
you,
great
Rochelle.
evening.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Take care.
Yeah, have a great night.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night. Thank
Have
you.
a great
Bye-bye.
one. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.